Join us in this power-packed episode as Jay Fairbrother, the mastermind guy, reveals the secrets to soaring past six figures in revenue with high-impact, high-ticket programs. Discover how, even without a massive following, you can create your own mastermind or hybrid, high-end offering. Plus, Jay discusses how masterminds can combat global isolation, fostering meaningful human connections, which is super important these days, and just one group at a time. So don't miss this opportunity to supercharge your expertise and change more lives.
This episode of the Lead Machine Growth Show is brought to you by Lead Machine, the step-by-step, tech-easy system for getting leads online. Are you struggling to get leads from your lead magnet? Are you tired of seeing low conversion rates and losing potential customers? It's time to revive your lead magnet and start attracting more leads. Download our free report, 10 Deadly Lead Magnet Mistakes That Are Costing You Leads, and learn how to create a high-converting lead magnet that engages your audience and drives conversions. Don't let common mistakes hold you back any longer. Revive your lead magnet today and download your free report at www.getleadmachine.com/deadly. Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where you will discover how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Paul Guyan, the mastermind behind the Lead Machine, introduces you to trailblazers who inspire you to implement life-changing solutions and systems you can model to nurture your leads and get your offers seen by your ideal clients who will invest in themselves and you. Be sure you visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, tune in and get ready to transform your vision into reality.
Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyan, your host, Lead Machine coach, and founder and creator of the Lead Machine Mastermind Group. I'm dedicating to helping you tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Whether you're just starting out or you want to take your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started and turn your dreams into reality. So today's guest is Jay Fairbrother. Welcome to the show, my brother. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Paul. Happy to be here. Always thrilled to be interviewed by someone who has their own mastermind and knows a thing or two about them.
Yeah, I know a thing or two, but I have a feeling I'm going to probably pick up some tips from you. So I'm really excited about this episode. So I read in your bio about a dramatic event in 2010 that happened to many of us. And I'm just wondering, how did this event change your mindset, and how did it influence your focus on the mastermind?
Yeah, so the event, of course, was the Great Recession, which started around 2008. And in my case, finally ended in 2012 when I was completely wiped out, bankrupt, and broke.
Wow.
So the story basically is that I've been a serial entrepreneur for 30 some years. And my first business, I actually was fairly successful. I grew it to about 10 million in revenue and 200 employees. And I sold it in 2004.
Wow. And
life was pretty good. I traveled and bought 3 other businesses and made all kinds of investments. And, as often happens in life, things are going along swimmingly and something out of your control happens.
Yeah.
And you mentioned I certainly wasn't the only one that got wiped out. But yeah, I literally in a few-year period went from, being a multi-millionaire living in a mansion to living in my friend's basement without a car, lost my marriage, everything. So it took me, I'm not proud to talk about how long it took me to get out of that basement. I lived there literally for about 5 months, but figuratively for more like 5 years, just dealing with the shame and that really the complete loss of identity. For 15 years built up this identity as incredibly successful serial entrepreneur, and suddenly there I am alone sitting in the basement in my shame and humiliation. So in terms of, obviously it changed me a lot.
Yeah.
And so I've been a serial entrepreneur for 30 years, but 25 years ago, I got into my very first mastermind. And it was a mastermind group of entrepreneurs. And when I first joined that mastermind, it was really eye-opening to me because I had kind of been the poster child for disconnection through most of my early adult life.
Yeah.
And that mastermind was the first time I really felt really connected to people. Like, we joined that mastermind to grow our businesses and be better entrepreneurs, but 5 or 6 months into it, I'm watching like grown men cry in these mastermind meetings, talking about, as they start to open up about their messed up marriages and their kid problems and how the business is, creating anxiety and depression. And it really, that was the unexpected part for me. And I loved it. So I started joining every mastermind I could from there on out. But fast forward to losing everything, the only reason I'm probably here today is because of that very first mastermind, which I stayed in for 17 years.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
those people helped me way beyond just a basement to live in and a car to borrow for some time until I could get back on my feet. Just the ways they supported me and carried me and helped. And it's that level of connection is why I now, for my kind of last chapter, is I help coaches, speakers, entrepreneurs to create their own mastermind programs as a way to scale their business, but also as a way to create that connection that, is often missing in our lives and especially in society today.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is really can be lonely, and people just don't understand you. And having a group like that you can depend on, um, you know, I can relate to the basement and moving back with my parents, a long time ago, and a divorce and losing almost everything, losing the house, uh, those kinds of things. The thing is, the thing that a group like that helps you with is helps you realize that your value isn't really in what you do for a job. It's who you are. It's your value is who you are as a person. And the fact that you stayed in that mastermind group for 17 years is admirable. Uh, and they must be some really awesome people that recognize your value and help you recognize it yourself,
Yeah.
because that shame didn't need to be there. But I understand it. I've been there. I've lost a really super high paying job and with lots of responsibility, and it took me not 5 months. It took me a while to get over that. Wow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
so
it's the relationships, it's I call the who do you pick up your phone list. When
yeah,
somebody calls at 11:30 at night, the relationships I've formed over the years and many other masterminds as well as that one, you just can't replace. I mean, there are people that support you, but here's the critical factor, and this is important when you're looking at setting up a mastermind, is you want people to have mutual respect for each other and support each other without an agenda. And if you think about the kind of support that we get in life from just about every other source, there's always an agenda
mm,
attached, right?
yeah,
Your family members have an agenda attached. Your employees have an agenda. Your vendors have an agenda. Your advisors and coaches and mentors have agendas, right? But to
yeah,
put together a group of people where like the participants are like, look, we're all equal here and we're here to help each other and support each other. And, we give first and get value second. That's really the culture that makes them the magic in a mastermind come to life.
yeah, I agree. So for those out there who are listening, they may be hearing about what a mastermind is for the first time. You and I've been involved in them for a long time, but what is a mastermind, and how can it be beneficial to an entrepreneur as well as to just an average person?
Yeah. So Napoleon Hill is often credited with coming up
Mm,
with the term mastermind, and
yeah,
his concept was pretty simple. You put one person with a brain in a room with another person with a brain, and you create a third invisible, intangible force that he called the mastermind.
yeah,
So if you imagine putting 8 to 14 people in 8 to 14 brains in that room, and the size of the invisible, intangible force that you can create when you create that safe container where people trust each other, there's support without agendas, etc. You tap into that collective wisdom, the collective knowledge, the co-creation and collaboration that can occur with that many people supporting and helping each other. So a true mastermind, we often talk about in the sense of about 8 to 14 people. And the reason it's small is because in a true mastermind, in every meeting, every person should have a voice. Every person should participate. I say there's two things you don't want in your mastermind programs: lurkers and narcissists. Hopefully the latter for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that true mastermind, is that small group of people, often that stay together, sometimes for 17 years.
Yeah.
But there are variations that you can create as well. And so in my industry of coaches and speakers and healers, often what is labeled a mastermind is really just glorified group coaching.
Yeah.
They slap a mastermind label on it because it sounds better and they can charge more money. But it's really just, it's a one to guru relationship for the people participating, right? Instead of intentionally building the relationships with the participants going through the program together, so that they can support each other and hold each other accountable and tap into that bigger wisdom, right? So there's lots of things in between that true mastermind and there's what I call hybrid programs, which is often what I teach, because I'm teaching a coach or an expert or a guru who's leading a program and doing some coaching and teaching and mentoring as part of it, but also creating that mastermind environment as well.
Yeah, and it's funny when you do get those 8 to 14 people in the room, you think about that collective mind power, but you don't really recognize it until someone pipes up and says, "Hey, you might not have thought of this, but you know, what if this?" And that's when that's when if you're the one who's asking the group for support, you should start taking notes, because someone from the outside can see something plain as day that you'll never see, or they might come up with, back in the day, it was the banks were the first people to have a drive-in window. And then someone said, "Hey, what if we did that for food?" And I don't remember who the first one who did it was, maybe Jack in the Box or something like that. But that was the advent of the drive-through window at fast food restaurants. And that just revolutionized the whole industry. So if you're in a mastermind and you're in the hot seat or the revenue seat or the profit seat or whatever they call, where you're saying, "Hey, this is my challenge. This is what I'm trying to get to." And someone says, "Hey, this might sound stupid," but that's when you should really pay attention, because that collective mind share really is something, a power. It's the sum of the greater, or the sum of the group is greater than any of the individual parts, you know?
So one of the most common types of masterminds, and in some ways an easier mastermind to create, is industry specific masterminds where everyone is in the same industry, right?
Yeah.
That's usually, people have heard of that kind of thing. My personal preference, though, is that diversity within the mastermind, for exactly what you just talked about. Is in the literally more than 1,000 mastermind meetings that I've participated in over 25 years, I don't think I've ever been in a single meeting and somebody didn't ask a question and I thought to myself, man, I never even would have thought to ask that question.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's that magic. That's where the real learning occurs, is when you're being challenged by people thinking outside of your own box.
Yeah. And since we're talking about those different kinds of masterminds, mine is focused on business growth and specifically creating lead machines or funnels. And then the messaging, the mindset, and the business around business growth, all of those things are in play. The mindset, especially, because a lot of people don't believe that what they're proposing, or maybe they don't know their audience well enough yet. they don't really know what their problems are, so they have trouble getting leads. And so my masterminds tend to be around a specific topic or a general topic like that. But I have been in masterminds where everyone was there was a realtor, there was a finance guy, there was a financial planner, there's a banker, and there was a what was the other guy? Oh, author, speaker. And they're, everyone, but everybody wanted the same thing. They wanted to grow their business. They wanted to show up. But it was really that happened a lot where people would say, "Hey, you ever thought about this? Hey, you're struggling with, why don't you just take the talk that the one that you're giving? Why don't you just turn that into a book? Why don't you record that and make that into a book?" It's like, duh, like bing. And those kinds of ideas just come up. And so,
Yeah.
how I see have had just a group coaching program before. Mine tend to be a hybrid, like you were talking about. Can you explain that a little bit more? We do kind of work around the same topic when you're doing that hybrid model. Is that right?
Yeah, so the hybrid model just incorporates a couple of things, and in a true pure mastermind, like a true mastermind is a group of peers. There isn't even necessarily a guru leader at the top who's teaching, training, or mentoring anyone.
Yeah.
It's putting together people who have common aspirations and goals,
Hmm.
common fears, challenges, and frustrations. There has to be that commonality for an
Yeah.
effective
Okay.
mastermind to work.
Yeah.
And I just want to take an aside on that point for a second. So what you don't want in a mastermind is one person sticking out like that. Like you don't want others in the program thinking, why did they let that person in? Because they don't seem to fit with the rest of us.
Yeah.
So the key is, like, an example would be if you have a mastermind of entrepreneurs, you don't want an entrepreneur doing $250,000 in revenue in the same mastermind as somebody doing 20 million.
Yeah.
And it's not because they don't have the same business problems, because business problems are universal,
Yeah.
but it's a matter of that mutual respect, that they have to think that the person, at any of the levels in the group are relatively, their peers in some respect. So that's the sort of commonality point. On the hybrid thing, if you have the guru, coach, mentor on top, and you have commonality among all the participants in the group, what you want to do is intentionally build relationships with the people in the program, in the group, so that you can scale the mastermind to 20, 50, even 100 members. But in that case, what you would be doing is you'd be breaking them into smaller, like, accountability pods, or using breakout rooms, where you're doing some things where they are intentionally building relationships with each other in the program.
Ah.
So the difference is you're removing that one to guru relationship, which does a couple of things. It puts less pressure on you to have brilliant content and training every single time you show up, because
Yeah.
you're tapping into that collective wisdom.
Right.
But more importantly, you're creating that stickiness, so that you never have to worry about getting to a point where it's like, okay, well, I've been in Paul's program for 6 months and I feel like he's taught me everything he knows. So I'm going to look for another coach or a mentor or a program.
Yeah.
If during that 6 months I have built these relationships with other people in the program who want to continue on working with Paul and everybody else in the group as an ongoing mastermind, or commit to another year or whatever, you're like, yeah, I love this group. I get valued every time I show up. I don't want to leave.
Yeah. That's one of the questions I was going to ask, was how can you scale? And that was the answer right there. When you have some, I mean, you may have to teach some people some skills, some facilitation skills. Is that right? Where if you wanted to have them lead a pod or a breakout room, you might want to mentor some people or groom some people that are in your program
Yep.
to be in that role.
That's exactly right. And
Yeah.
you can teach facilitation. It is a skill that you can learn. And
Yeah.
but a lot of it stems from creating the container correctly in the first place. A lot of people think a mastermind is just a bunch of people, similar people who get together over cocktails and talk about their business or talk about their health challenges or whatever the mastermind is formed around.
Yeah.
And it's important that the mastermind has structure and direction, and that you create this safe, confidential, trusted space so that people can open up and go be to more deeper levels of conversation and vulnerability than you would get in your typical like group coaching Q&A type environment where people are worried about being judged or worried about asking a stupid question or that kind of thing. That's important to create that container.
So what would a typical container like you describe it? What would that look like? What it would the structure of the container, let's call it.
So there's a lots of different there's many kinds of masterminds, right? And that's
Yeah.
one of the things I believe in very strongly is I don't teach somebody to do my mastermind, just do it the way I did it. That's good, works for everybody. You have to find the unique sort of combination. It's like kind of putting pieces of a puzzle together that works best for you. Based on your superpowers, your skills, and what the transformation and big promise of the group is. So the tricky thing is when you try to if you try to overlay a structure that doesn't work for you, like say you like retreats, so you're going to force everybody to go on 4 retreats a year or something like that when that wasn't clear at the beginning. So a lot of it's just having a clear structure. Most masterminds run either once a month or twice a month, although there are successful ones that they'll get together 4 times a year over a 3-day weekend, and that's the entire mastermind. So there's all kinds of ways you can put it together and structure it. And then it's a matter of how the meetings run in terms of, is there content training portion and then masterminding or hot seats or, group topic discussions and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And the way I do it, I like to have either, and now that I have a podcast, I have lots of guests in this conversation. Some of it could be a part of a training that I might do on mindset or about forming. Maybe there's a slice in here that will be really valuable in my mastermind group. So that's a great place to get content from for your training if you're doing training. And I think having a structure and holding space for people is super important. Just so that they, like you said earlier, having the opportunity to have a voice, which is why they need to be small or they need to be segmented out so that there's, a facilitator that can hold that space. And sometimes that's really all that people need. A lot of times, and I experience this all the time in IT, when if I'm calling for tech support or something, when I'm explaining my problem, I know I have to be very, very specific with the person on the other end of the line. A lot of times that's all I need. That's all I need to do is have someone hold that space so I can say, aha, they asked one question and, oh, I didn't think of that. And then it comes to you and then you have a solution. And so having structure, I think, is super important. But that's a good observation that you need to make it work for you and for the group. And there's going to be a dynamic in that group, right?
Yeah, and you want to have flexibility too. Like one of the things, just a specific example of that is, like when I put together agendas for a mastermind meeting, like I will have it for myself. I'll have it timed down to the minute, like where the section's this long and the section's this long. But I don't give those minutes to my participants because
Yeah.
I need to have flexibility. The last thing you want to do in a mastermind is you've got this great energy flow discussion going and you're like, oh guys, this is great, but we got to move on to the next, section. you need to have that flexibility to allow that sort of organic development of great conversations and idea exchange. So what I do is I have it timed to the minute, but I also kind of keep a backup plan as a facilitator. Like, okay, if this section runs long, here's how I'm going to adjust, and I kind of have those kind of ideas in my head so that I can pivot on the fly and make sure. But I don't want to give those times to everybody else, because there'll always be one person in the room going, we were supposed to move on to the next section and he's 5 minutes late. He's not a very good facilitator. So
Right. And sometimes someone will show up and they've got a real serious problem.
yeah,
And the group the whole group may need to hold space for them and give them the support. And maybe all the support is they just need someone to listen to them.
yeah.
Or they might need some advice.
You're exactly right. And then a good facilitator will get the group buy-in around that issue and say, you know what, like, we weren't planning this, but Paul showed up today and it sounds like this is a really big issue. Are we okay? And speaking to the group, are we all okay if we take some time that wasn't scheduled for this, but to focus on Paul and help Paul right now? And if the group is there to support each other, you're always going to get buy-in to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So moving on, why is a mastermind good for coaches and healers and speakers? Why is it so good for them?
Well,
that group in particular.
Yeah, we've touched on a couple of the issues. Number one is there's less reliance on content and you being a brilliant trainer every single moment of every single meeting.
Yeah.
The other is recurring revenue. For anybody who's been a coach or speaker or healer for more than a minute, the roller coaster of launch revenue cycles, right? You do this big launch, you get this big revenue hit, and then you have nothing for the next few months until the next launch. And it's, God forbid you do this huge launch and it isn't as successful as you wanted. And then you got nothing for the next few months. So, masterminds where, 80% of the people will pay on a monthly payment option instead of full price. It evens out revenue for you. And then another big one is just to me, it's the impact that you can make. I mean, most real life-changing transformations when we work with clients don't occur in a 6-week container or 8-week container like a course,
right,
or even like a 3-month group coaching program. Obviously, business issues are ongoing, right? As soon as you solve one, another one pops up. So there's always things you can work on. But a lot of lifestyle, coaches, a lot of people think masterminds are just for entrepreneurs, but lifestyle coaches and healers, it actually works amazingly for, because often you need 6 months or 12 months of working with somebody to have that real transformation.
Yeah.
And then
they understand that too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then to me, the biggest reason is you get to pick and choose who you want to work with. And what I mean by that is, part of the key in terms of sales and marketing to sell masterminds and enroll people into masterminds is the idea. That's what I call, you flip the selling script, so that instead of me chasing clients all the time and trying to convince you to be in my program, I position it so that, look, this is an incredibly exclusive, intimate group of people that's invite only. So why don't you tell me why I should let you into the group? What value can you bring and add to the group? Right? So that's kind of the holy grail when you can get to that point in terms of positioning. And you'll see a lot of the really expensive, $25,000 a year, $50,000, $100,000 a year masterminds are exactly like that. It's like, well, why should we let you in?
Yeah. And so what if you're just starting out and that's what, one of the things I heard you say, I think on Michael Whitehouse's one of his events, maybe it was JV Connect, about, it's easier to get to 6-figure with a mastermind than with any program or ebook or whatever course you're selling. So can you explain that, and how can you do that when you're just starting out?
Yeah. My favorite statistic is that if you have a $1,500 course or a $1,500 coaching package, you need 67 clients before you reach six figures in revenue.
Yeah.
And as you know, as a lead machine guy,
Yeah.
it's a process to get 67 clients through your funnel, right? I mean, that's effort and sometimes cost, and right, you've got to have a system to do that. So especially when you're starting out, all you need to do is find 9 people who know, love, and trust you, not know, like, and trust you, but know, love, and trust you, who would pay $1,000 a month to be in your exclusive, intimate mastermind. And that is a six-figure business right there with 9 people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of leverage. And so, okay, so I'm just starting out and, I've got some expertise. I might have a program. I might have, I've got some content that I can teach people with. How do I get people uh, into my program, and how do I establish myself with that kind of leverage that you're talking about?
Yeah. So one of the reasons I kind of like the model as well is because you can do it on a very sort of old school grassroots way, just by talking to people, getting people to refer you to others who might be interested in the topic that your mastermind is centered around. And there's a few different ways to move people on that spectrum from know, like, and trust to know, love, and trust. But some of it can be very organic. In other words, if you can put together a list of 50 people that are past clients, current clients, networking people who might know people that fit your target market and that kind of thing, it's a matter of understanding who are the right people you're looking for. That's really one of the most important factors, because
Yeah.
if you are just doing a scattergun approach, you're going to need a lead machine to bring in enough people to find the ones who are really appropriate. So you've got to be really clear on who it's for and who it's not for.
Yeah.
And go out and try to find those people.
Yeah, and that's what we teach in the lead machine is to getting clear on who your audience is and what problem you're trying to solve. And so layering on top of that idea is that you want, when you think of those 50 people that you're talking about, I call them strategic partners or joint venture partners who have that audience. They're serving that audience already. So you could approach them, even if you're small, you could approach them to have them promote your offer, your webinar, or however you're going to, and we'll get to that in a minute, however you're going to offer it. You seek out people who serve the same audience but don't provide the same solution. Obviously, you don't want to recruit a competitor as a joint venture partner. But how do you find those? And especially when you're new, that's what that's a big stumbling block for people.
No, I completely get it. Like, I have a tiny email list, and I can't go out and trade with a JV partner who's got a big email list, which is what I really need. Yep. So when you're starting out, you can find there's lots of people out there who have your size email list, whether it's 10 people or 100 people or 1,000.
Yeah.
So you can find kind of equitable partners like that. But any stages as well. I mean, any stage that has again a very specific audience that has your ideal clients in it is worth it. When you're starting out, just get on that stage and talk about your program. And again, it's something I referred to earlier. It's when you talk about your program as this exclusive, invite only, you have to apply to be in the program kind of thing, that alone creates desire just in the way you talk about it and represent it. It's like, oh, well, I wonder how I would qualify for that. How do I get into that?
Yeah.
That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because because these are issues that I'm concerned about. These are the aspirations and goals that I have. These are the fears and challenges, frustrations that I have. If that's what your promise of your mastermind is, and you're talking about it on a small stage, even in front of 20 people, if there's a few people in there that you can invite to apply or talk to, have a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah, I like the application idea that that kind of, and not only that, the application process, even if people don't make the cut the first time, you're still building your email list.
Yeah.
And so there might be other things that they're interested in. Maybe they can't afford $1,000 a month, but maybe they can afford your one-time only $500 program,
Absolutely.
or your $200 program, or your $47
Right.
product.
So yeah, and that's the thing. That's where a lot of people get stuck when they're starting out, is because they can't really get on big stages, because they can't get big JV partners. They're willing to talk to just about anybody. They'll jump on a one-on-one call with just about anyone.
Yeah.
But what you'll learn quickly is that if you're selling a $500 or $1,000 program, you cannot scale with one-on-one calls to sell a $500 or $1,000 program.
Yeah.
But if you're selling a $5,000 program or a $10,000 program, now you can justify those one-on-one calls, because if you have 10 calls and get one, hopefully you'll do better than that ratio. But even if you have 10 calls and get one person, that was worth your time.
That's 10 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So, what are a few of the keys to creating a great mastermind? What makes a great mastermind? I mean, we've touched on a lot of those things already, but.
So it's about having that commonality, creating that safe, structured space, non-judgmental. Confidentiality is critical. You need people to be able to open up and talk about those issues that are really bothering them. And like I said earlier, I got into this business mastermind, and 6 months into it, we're talking about very personal issues.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, that's not why I signed up. But that's the outgrowth, right? That's what happens because you're creating that safe container. I often compare a mastermind to like a womb. So it's got everything you need, not to just survive, but to thrive and grow. And so that sort of getting the relationships built, that trusted confidential container, that's one of the keys. And then you just need to make sure that you're delivering on the value, on what the promise of the mastermind is, right? So if we joined it to be better entrepreneurs, yes, we can talk about those deeply personal issues once we get to know each other and everybody's comfortable. You don't force that. That happens organically. But you've got to be able to be helping people grow their businesses. If that's the reason they join, you have to be fulfilling that big promise.
Right. And I think, and we touched on it, we've talked about this a couple of times, that isolation, having those human connections and having a safe place to go once a month or twice a month, or once a quarter for 3 days, that promise of not only being a better entrepreneur, let's say, or growing your business or building your lead machine or whatever it might be, being a better, growing a mastermind, having that additional promise. I mean, there's multiple benefits to your program or to your mastermind group, and that having a safe place to go where things are confidential, I think is a key promise, key to the promise that you're offering. Don't you agree?
I remember, 20 some years ago, and I was in a situation where I was having a cash flow problem, and quite literally, if I didn't come up with like 20 grand to meet the payroll the next, time, like the whole thing was coming crashing down, right? Well, I couldn't go home to my wife, how was your day, honey? Well, if I don't have $25,000, we're going to lose the house. Like, you can't have that conversation at home.
No.
That's the loneliness of the entrepreneur that you talked about. Is there certain things that we don't want to, it's not because I didn't have a good relationship with my wife. It's because I don't want to burden her and scare her half to death. Like I'm scared half to death that, this stuff. So having that group of people, no agenda, there to support, not judge, and have collective knowledge and wisdom and resources that can actually help in those situations. That's where the magic of the mastermind happens.
Yeah, and I guess that also helps when you have a diverse group. Uh, my mastermind group has, some beginners and some more experienced people, and they help each other, and that's a safe place. You mentioned the loneliness of being an entrepreneur and your partner, your spouse, or whatever. I think it's important though to make sure that you have a solid relationship with whoever that is, so that they know what you're doing and why. And it's a damn good idea to know why you're doing what you're doing also, so that you have that foundation and that ability and that confidence. Because frankly, my family doesn't understand what I do. My wife does though, because she hears me. She hears me. She knows and she sees the people that I'm talking to. She hears the results they're getting. She understands, but not everybody does. And we do talk about it. And fortunately, she's my best friend too. And part of the reason why I got back into coaching again uh, was her encouragement. But I think it's important to have those relationships beyond the group too, so that there's some balance. Don't you agree? What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more you have that connection in your life, personal and or professional, the better off you're going to be. And that's the thing that I it sounds like a sort of cheap marketing ploy, but I truly believe that we can save the planet by through creating one mastermind at a time, because I know
Yeah.
the connection levels that are possible in these groups. And for me, those connection levels have often been, as strong, if not stronger, than some of my family connections and friends and that kind of thing. So that to me, that's why I'm passionate about it, is because I want to help people create those connections, with your peers, with your clients, create that group of people that you pick up the phone for at 3 a.m. if they call.
Yeah. Yeah. I have some friends like that. We're in a men's group, and it's not a business group, it's a faith group.
Mhm.
And there's about 40 of them that we've been through the same program over the last 7 or 8 years. And there's a few that we know we stay in touch, and we know that we can count on each other. A brother of mine, he lost his wife to cancer just a couple of months ago, and there were 500 people at the funeral. Which is extraordinary. Now she was a leader in the school system, so that was a lot of the children, but a lot of us brothers were there to support him.
Yeah.
So those human connections are super super important. And if you can build a mastermind like that with people like that who care about each other, then yeah, you can change the world. I mean, there
Yeah,
was
and faith groups are a great example of that it doesn't have to be just business groups. I
right.
mean, the faith group that draws that commonality together, and the fact that it's a men's faith group, that's one extra layer of commonality that
Yeah.
draws people together, and that's a perfect example of that, and that's a place I say to start. So I know you're going to ask this. So if there's one action item that I would say from this today, is to think about who are the people that you would wake up in the morning just absolutely thrilled that you got to meet with them that day in your mastermind group. Who are those people that it wouldn't be a burden to run this program? It would be an absolute joy, because you love them, they love you, and together as a group, you're helping each other get better as a person, get better as a business owner, get better in life. And you probably heard that thing. It's like a conversation starter thing of if you could put 6 people dead or alive at a dinner party, who would you invite? It's kind of along those lines. Like if you could put anybody around your table, your mastermind table of 8 to 12 people, who would they be, and what are their commonalities and things that they would be able to support each other with?
Yeah. And so that kind of leads me into that question as your final words to our listeners. And I do appreciate you, the things you've shared so far. What are 3 things our listeners can do today to put these ideas into action?
Yeah, covered number one, which is the who. I do a whole talk called the Purple Fish Talk, and I refer to your purple fish clients, and it's figuring out who you're fishing for. If you trying to catch a purple fish, you don't just rent a boat and drive it into the ocean, right? You're going to be strategic about where do you find purple fish, and what do they eat, and where do they hang out,
and who do they know,
and
who else knows where they hang out.
Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is for all the coaches, sort of big newer entrepreneurs just starting out, trying to get traction with this. When we start out, we often start from the premise of, I've got all this expertise and experience. What program can I create that people will buy? Yeah. Right? Because we're trying to make some revenue. We're trying to make a go of this thing, right?
Yeah.
And I want you to shift that perspective to, don't worry about what you can create that people will buy. Worry about who you want to create it for. Who are those people that you would create a program around, right? And then, again, when we start out, we think we got to do a course or a low price program, because that's what they teach us, right? You have a lead magnet, and then a low price program, then a mid-level program, and eventually you can have a high-level program. Well, I say envision your high-level program now, starting today.
Right.
What would that look like? Who are the people that are going to be in it? What does it look like? Is it a mastermind? Is it a mentorship one-on-one? You got to have a high-end program. You've got to have something you can sell for $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. Even if you don't have the confidence right now to go out and sell it, and you're not even sure, start working on what that would be. Because I can tell you from all of the clients that I've worked with, and myself as an example, I struggled to get to 6 figures until I created that high-end program.
Yeah.
And then it was like, now I do 6 figures in one 3-day event. So you've got to have that high-end program envisioned, because then once you sort of know who that's for and what it looks like, all your decisions you make day to day about your lower end programs and what stages you're going to get on, and what you're like, does this help me get to that high end program? If no, don't do it. And if yes, then pursue it.
Yeah, I like that approach. And the other thing that's really important about that is that once you do have that high end program defined, there are pieces of that program that you can. And Ryan Dice says splinter. He uses the concept of splintering, but you can break out pieces of that, which are maybe prerequisites that you would take a client, if they were in your $10,000 program or your $20,000 or your high-end program, this is the first step they would take. And that would probably be some sort of assessment or some sort of a checklist, like, am I ready? Do I have the resources? Do I have the need? Do I have the clarity? Do I have the acumen? Do I have the networking? Do I have the list? Whatever it is, some sort of assessment to assess where they are. And from there, that could be your $47 product. That's part of your program. And you can have, maybe that assessment is your first step. Maybe that's just a lead magnet. And maybe there's the next part of it leads to the ladder that leads to your 10,000 program. And some people, and this is one thing I wanted to ask you, I forgot to ask you, was that one of my mentors, Jim Palmer, teaches creating lucrative virtual masterminds. And he recommends having 2 or 3 levels of pricing in his structure. And he says that there's about 15 people, the percent of the people a lot of them are going to take, a certain percent will take the lowest one. And then a certain percentage will take the middle one. And if you price the higher one just a little bit, maybe $150 to $200 more per month, that some of the people are going to take that too. But your sweet spot's going to be in the middle. Is there a pricing? Do you price things that way, or is that something that you can talk about?
Yeah, I have a whole program on pricing. It's one of my splinters, right?
Yeah.
So I would add one caveat to what you just explained that Jim does, because when you're starting out, I would start with one.
Yeah.
And the reason is there's nothing worse to put all this effort in to launch a new mastermind program and you end up with 3 people in it because you don't have that scale yet. You haven't talked to enough people, you haven't gotten in there. So what you wouldn't want to do is splinter and have 3 people in 3 different groups at 3 different price points, right? That's something you can work towards for sure, because people will respond to different price points. And another way to look at what Jim is doing there is instead of looking at it as 3 different programs, it's the same program with 3 different access levels.
And that's how he does position it, with access levels.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly. Because that's the other thing is when we're starting out, so many coaches they shoot themselves in the foot because they're developing like 3 different programs, right? They have a low end program and a mid program, and they're all different programs. It's like, how much effort and that is to
too much. Yeah, that makes sense. And it was the access level that he does. And so the people in the, let's say it's the silver, they have maybe a kickoff meeting with him, and then email access, and they can attend the group mastermind, but that's the extent of it. They don't get a hot seat. They don't get, but they get access to the digital products that he's got and those kinds of things. And then it just increases. Yeah. And a lot of people start with the one-on-one coaching because that seems to be the easiest to do, which it can be, but it's not scalable.
Correct.
You cannot be scalable. Well, Jay, thanks. Our time is about up. Thank you so much for being on the show today and talking about masterminds and one of my favorite topics in coaching. And Jay has a couple of gifts. Find out if you're mastermind ready. Find out how ready you are to add a mastermind program to your business. And I highly recommend that you do that. And you can get that at leadmachinegrowthshow.com/scorecard. That's leadmachinegrowthshow.com/scorecard. And Jay is also having a masterclass coming up on the 30th of January. So if you're listening before then, it's called How to Create and Launch a High Impact, High Ticket Mastermind. It's January 30th, 2024. And you can go to leadmachinegrowthshow.com/Jay's Masterclass. That's leadmachinegrowthshow.com/JAYS Masterclass. So thanks again for coming. And remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal. And until next time, I'm Paul Guyan, and Jay Fairbrother, thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyan, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.